Who's the last person you'd expect to use hungry kids as a weapon? I used to think the answer was no one. Now I know better. I run an after-school program in the basement of a church that leaks when it rains and smells faintly like crayons and old coffee. It's called the Lighthouse, which sounds fancier than it is. We feed kids, help them with homework, and keep them off the street from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. Most of their parents work 2 jobs. Some of them don't come home sober. For a lot of these kids, our pasta and peanut butter sandwiches are the only real meal they get all day. For 3 years, it was chaotic but good. The kind of good that's loud and sticky and full of broken pencils and spilled juice. Then last winter, the kids started getting sick. It started on a Tuesday. We'd done spaghetti and garlic bread, the usual cheap carb bomb that fills little stomachs fast. I was at the sink trying to scrub tomato sauce off a pan that had seen better decades when I heard chairs scraping and someone whimpering, "Miss Kara." I turned around. Jaden, 9 years old, usually the first to make jokes, was hunched over the table, arms wrapped around his belly. His face was gray. "What's wrong, buddy?" I asked, drying my hands on my jeans as I walked over. "My stomach," he whispered. "It hurts bad." Before I could say anything, he threw up all over his worksheet. Chaos exploded. 3 kids screamed. One girl started crying because she hated vomit more than math. Another boy, Mateo, backed up so fast his chair tipped and he crashed to the floor. Okay, I said, trying to sound calm. "Jaden, let's get you to the bathroom. Everyone else, stay seated." Our volunteer, Mr. Henry, an old teacher who came in 3 times a week, helped me walk Jaden down the hall. He was shaking, sweat on his forehead like he'd run a mile. We called his mom, who worked evenings at the grocery store. She came in 10 minutes later, still in her apron, eyes wide. "He was fine this morning," she said. "Maybe he ate something on the bus. We chalked it up to a bug. Kids get sick." We cleaned everything with bleach, opened the tiny windows to air out the room, and kept going. By Thursday, he was back, a little tired but okay. I didn't think about it again. The next week, 3 kids got sick. Same pattern. Fine when they arrived. Ate dinner. About half an hour later, pale faces, stomach cramps, vomiting. I watched little bodies curl up on stiff folding chairs, tears tracking down cheeks, hands on their bellies. One girl kept saying, "Am I in trouble? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." By then, the parents were angry. Of course they were. "What are you feeding them?" one dad demanded at the door. "Because my son was fine all day until he came here. We use donated food," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mostly from the food bank, some from the grocery store. Everything's in date. I'll double check it all. I'm so sorry." He stared at me like he didn't believe a word. That night, I stayed late with our kitchen volunteer, Ruth. She's in her 60s, quiet, with strong hands and a soft voice. We pulled every can off the shelves, checked dates, sniffed containers, threw out anything even slightly suspicious. "Maybe it's a virus," she said, wiping down the counter for the 3rd time. "Stomach bugs go through kids like wildfire. 3 kids in one day," I said, all after they ate here. She didn't argue, but she didn't answer either. I should have listened to the knot in my stomach then. I didn't. I told myself we were overreacting, that we'd be more careful, that it would pass. It didn't. The next Monday, it was 5 kids. One of them, Lexi, a tiny 7-year-old with braids and big brown eyes, scared me the most. She didn't throw up. She just went limp. Kara, one of the teens, called. "Lexi's not right." I rushed over. Lexi was slumped in her chair, eyes half closed, breathing fast. "Hey, sweetheart," I said, crouching in front of her. "Can you look at me?" Her eyes fluttered, then rolled back for a second. Something in me snapped from worry to action. "Call 911, I told the teen. Now. The ambulance came with bright lights that made our dusty windows look like a crime scene. The kids pressed themselves against the wall, eyes wide, whispering. Lexi's mom arrived at the same time as the paramedics, her face twisted in panic. "What happened?" she cried. "She got very weak," I said, voice shaking. "She's going to the hospital to be safe." They strapped Lexi to a stretcher, tiny arm dwarfed by the blood pressure cuff. As they wheeled her out, she turned her head just enough to look at me. "Am I bad?" she whispered. My throat closed. "No," I said. "You're brave. That's all." After they left, I went into the tiny office we used as storage and shut the door. My hands were trembling. I called our board chair, Pastor Allen, a thin white man in his 60s with kind eyes and a tired face. "We need help," I said as soon as he picked up. "Kids keep getting sick. This isn't normal. Something's wrong." He was quiet for a moment. "Maybe it's just a virus," he said finally. "But you're right. We can't ignore it. I'll call the health department in the morning. In the meantime, maybe avoid serving anything risky. Simple food, bread, fruit, things like that." "We don't really serve risky things," I said. "We barely afford anything at all." "Then we pray," he said softly. "And we document." The next day, someone else called before he got the chance, the health department. They'd been contacted by the hospital. A child from the Lighthouse had come in with severe dehydration and possible food poisoning. They were sending an inspector that afternoon. When the woman arrived, she wore a navy polo shirt with a city logo and carried a clipboard like a weapon. She introduced herself as Miss Chang, shook my hand, and then went through our kitchen like a storm. "Where do you store meats?" she asked. "We almost never get meat," I said. "Mostly canned goods and dry stuff." She opened every cabinet, checked the temperature of our ancient fridge, squinted at the peeling paint on the walls. "Your facility is old," she said. "These surfaces are hard to sanitize, but so far I don't see anything obviously dangerous." "So what's making them sick?" I asked. She didn't answer. She wrote something on her clipboard instead. "We'll need a list of everything the kids ate on the days they were ill," she said, "and their names, ages, symptoms, and when those started." I pulled out our attendance sheets and meal plans. We sat at one of the long tables while she copied down information. Her face stayed neutral, but her pen moved fast. "Are parents handling food at home properly?" she asked. "Any reports of families getting sick outside your program?" "Not that I've heard," I said. "Most of them don't have much food to mishandle. That's why they come here." She gave me a long look, then stood. "We'll run some tests on your water and whatever leftovers you have," she said. "For now, switch to shelf-stable, pre-packaged snacks only. No reheated food, no salads. Nothing that can spoil quickly, and keep documenting." Then she left, and I was alone with a room that suddenly felt dangerous. That night, Lexi's mom texted me a photo from the hospital. Lexi in a bed, 4 in her hand, watching cartoons with glazed eyes. "Doctors say it's food poisoning. They don't know from where." I stared at the message until the words blurred. Then I walked back into the kitchen, turned on the overhead light, and started scrubbing. The next day, Pastor Allen called an emergency board meeting. We gathered in the church's fellowship hall upstairs. It felt strange to sit in a nicer room, while I was still thinking about the dingy basement where the kids lived most of their afternoons. Pastor Allen sat at the head of the table. Next to him was Lydia, the newest board member, a woman in her early 40s with a sleek bob haircut, expensive blazer, and nails that said she didn't wash dishes often. She ran a leadership consultancy downtown and had joined our board 6 months before, full of big ideas and bigger donors. On the other side sat Ruth, still in her worn cardigan, and 2 other board members, both older volunteers who'd been around since before I was born. "We have a problem," Pastor Allen said, folding his hands. "Children are getting sick." "No," Lydia said, leaning forward. "We have 3 problems: kids getting sick, parents panicking, and donors getting nervous. I've already had 2 emails asking if their money is supporting a lawsuit waiting to happen. Donors can wait," I said before I could stop myself. "Kids can't." Lydia's eyes flicked to me. "And if donors pull their funding, she said calmly. The kids won't have food at all. You do see that, right? Heat rose in my face. Yes, I said, but right now they have food that might be hurting them. Ruth cleared her throat. We've switched to prepackaged snacks like the inspector said, she said. Crackers, applesauce cups, milk cartons, nothing we cook, nothing we touch except handing it out. And are kids still getting sick? Lydia asked. I hesitated. Not yesterday, I said. But it's only been one day. Pastor Allen rubbed his temples. The health department is running tests, he said. We'll know more soon. In the meantime, we keep serving the children as safely as we can. Shutting down entirely would be catastrophic. Catastrophic for whom? I asked. He looked up, surprised. For the families, he said. For this neighborhood. You know that. I do, I said. But if something in this building is making them sick, we're hurting them by keeping it open. What if something in their homes is making them sick? Lydia asked. Have any of these parents taken responsibility? Food left out on counters, old takeout, dirty dishes. We can't carry the guilt for every child's stomachache. It's not a stomachache, I said. A little girl went to the hospital. And if this becomes a story, Lydia said, looking right at me, if it hits the news that church basement feeding kids poisons them, you know what happens. We lose grants, we lose donors, we lose partnerships, and then we're done. No lighthouse, no meals, nothing. So we lie, I asked, incredulous. We act like it's not happening, she smiled without warmth. We manage the message, she said. We don't panic. We don't point fingers at ourselves until we know for sure, and we definitely don't feed rumors. Pastor Allen held up a hand. We tell the truth, he said firmly, but we tell the whole truth. We're cooperating with the health department. We're following their instructions. We care for these children. That's the message. He looked at me. Kara, you'll talk to the parents at pickup, he said. Explain what we're doing. Reassure them. Keep records of any symptoms. We need you calm. I nodded because that was my job. The feeling in my chest, though, wasn't calm. It was something closer to fear. That afternoon, I stood in the doorway of the basement and talked to parents as they arrived. Yes, we know kids have been sick. Yes, the health department is involved. Yes, we're only serving sealed snacks. No, we don't know for sure it's from here. Some nodded, grateful for information. Some frowned and shifted their eyes away. A few pulled their kids out on the spot. I can't risk it, one mother said, holding her daughter's hand tight. I'm sorry, Miss Kara. You've been good to us, but my baby's all I have. I watched them walk away, the little girl glancing back over her shoulder at the room where she colored and laughed every day for a year. By the end of the week, our numbers had dropped from 42 kids to 30. The room felt thinner. The laughter sounded echoey. On Thursday, Miss Chang called. We tested your water, she said. It's fine. We tested sample leftovers from your fridge. Also fine. So what's making them sick? I asked. We don't know yet, she said. Are kids still having symptoms? Less, I said, since we switched to packaged snacks. That's good, she said. Keep that up and keep notes. We may need to look beyond food. Beyond food, I repeated. Think about anything they touch, breathe, play with, she said. Cleaning supplies, art materials, air vents. We'll schedule another visit next week. After I hung up, I looked around the room like I'd never seen it before. Fluorescent lights humming overhead, old carpet with suspicious stains, a row of mismatched bookshelves, the corner with the donated games and toys, the table where kids did crafts with glitter and glue and piles of colored paper. It all looked like childhood. It suddenly felt like a threat. That night, I stayed late again with Jenny, our newest volunteer. She was 23, studying social work, with messy hair and a serious face that broke into sudden bright smiles when kids did something kind. Let's make a list, she said, dragging a chair over. Everything kids interact with. We can start tracking patterns like a crime show. It feels like one, I muttered, but I grabbed a pen. We made columns: food, water, games, art supplies, cleaning supplies, rooms used, which kids, what days. We went back through the past 3 weeks of attendance and incident notes, writing down names and times. I'll put it into a spreadsheet later, Jenny said, rubbing her eyes. My roommate will make fun of me for nerding out on Excel, but whatever. I laughed weakly. Thank you, I said. I don't know how I do this alone. You shouldn't have to, she said. This place should have an entire safety team, honestly. But until the board grows a conscience, they've got me. You don't like our board? I asked, surprised. Jenny made a face. I like that they exist, she said, but I watched that last meeting from the hallway. Miss Blazer, what's her name? Lydia, I said. Yeah, Lydia cares a lot about donors, Jenny said. I didn't hear her say much about kids. She wants to keep the lights on, I said automatically. Jenny looked around at the flickering ceiling fixtures. Maybe, she said, or maybe she wants her name on a plaque. We finished listing and finally stumbled out into the cold evening air around 10. I had sauce on my shirt and a headache. Jenny had ink on her fingers. The next day, no kids got sick. For the first time in weeks, I exhaled for more than a few seconds at a time. Maybe it was over. Maybe it really was a virus. Maybe the test didn't find anything because there was nothing to find. I almost believed that on Monday, 2 more kids got sick. They hadn't eaten yet. It hit right after homework time. We just finished our reading circle when Mateo, the same boy who tipped his chair over during Jaden's incident, went still. His pencil fell from his hand. His lips trembled. Miss Kara, he whispered. What's wrong? I asked, moving toward him. It's, he said, then clutched his chest. At the same time, from the other table, a girl named Priya let out a soft moan and slid sideways off her chair. Hey, Jenny shouted, rushing forward. The room erupted again. Children stood, cried, backed away, calling my name. We laid them on mats on the floor, checked their breathing, their pulses. They were dizzy, disoriented, pale. Mateo said the room was spinning. Priya kept blinking like she couldn't focus. How long since they ate? Jenny asked. They haven't, I said. We haven't even served snacks yet. Her eyes met mine over the kids' heads. The fear there matched mine exactly. It wasn't the food. We called parents. No ambulance this time. By the time families arrived, the worst had passed, but they were shaking. I thought you said it was food, Priya's dad said, holding her close. You said you fixed it. We thought we did, I said, my voice small. We're working with the health department. They're still testing. On my child, he snapped. You're testing on my child. He turned and walked away. After they left, the silence in the room was worse than the chaos had been. Jenny sank into a chair and put her head in her hands. It's not the food, she said. It's not the water. What the hell is it? I looked at the list we'd made now, blotched with notes. Food, number water, number rooms used, main room only games. Mostly the same. Art supplies almost every day. I found myself staring at the corner where we kept the craft bins. It looked innocent: construction paper, glue sticks, crayons, markers, paint, beads. What did they do before reading circle? I asked slowly. Jenny lifted her head. They finished their art projects, she said. The thank you posters for donors. We both turned toward the art table. We walked over like it might bite us. The bins were labeled in my handwriting. Markers, glue, scissors, paint. The usual mix of donated brands and dollar store stuff. The kids had left everything out in their rush when Mateo and Priya fell. Smell weird to you? Jenny asked, picking up a blue marker cap. I sniffed. Smells like marker, I said, which is to say like regret. She half laughed, half sobbed. What about the glue? She asked. We went through each item like nervous scientists. Nothing seemed obviously off. The paint was crusty but normal. The beads smelled like cheap plastic. The glue sticks were sticky but not sinister. Then I opened a tub of glitter. The smell hit me like a slap. Not the usual vague chemical sparkle. Something sharp, bitter, like nail polish remover left in a closed closed car. Whoa, Jenny said, recoiling. What is that? I closed it quickly, my head already throbbing from the brief whiff. That, I said slowly, didn't come from the dollar store. We checked the label, no brand. Just a plain white sticker with glitter 7 gold written in black marker. I didn't recognize it. Most of our donations still had original packaging. This looked repackaged. Did Ruth decant this? I asked. Maybe she moved it from a bag. Maybe, Jenny said. But why would it smell like that? We both knew the answer. We just didn't want to say it yet. The next morning, I called Miss Chang. We found something, I said. A craft supply that smells wrong. 2 kids got sick after using it before they ate anything. She arrived an hour later with another inspector and a small case of sample jars. They had us open every art bin, every glue bottle, every paint container. When we got to the glitter tub, she leaned over, sniffed, and her eyes narrowed. That's not right, she said. She scooped a small amount into a jar, sealed it, labeled it with neat handwriting. We'll run tests, she said. In the meantime, remove all glitter and any unmarked craft products from the room. I mean all. If you don't know exactly where it came from, box it up. We spent the rest of the day packing up art supplies. The kids watched us with confusion. Why can't we make posters? One girl asked. Because we're getting all new stuff, I said. Better stuff. It was a lie. We had no budget for better stuff, but I needed them to feel safe. When the kids left, I sat on the kitchen floor, back against the cabinet, phone in my hand. I pulled up the donations log. Every time we got a box of supplies, we wrote down who gave it. We didn't get that many. Mostly small things. 2 boxes of crayons from a neighbor, a bag of pipe cleaners from Ruth's church friend, a giant box of random craft materials from iFroze, Urban Pathways Marketing, the entry read, from 3 weeks ago. Assorted craft supplies dropped off by rep, no name. Urban Pathways Marketing wasn't a person. It was a company. I knew because they'd turned us down for a partnership last year. They ran branding campaigns for local businesses. They also happened to share a building with another organization I knew well, Bright Futures Youth Center, our biggest competitor. They weren't supposed to be competitors. Of course, they were another after-school program across town. But where we were in a church basement with thrift store furniture, they were in a shiny new building with glass walls and a climbing wall. They charged fees on a sliding scale. They had a smoothie bar in the lobby. They had a wait list and professionally printed flyers. Last month, a parent had told me, we're switching to Bright Futures. They have more resources, meaning more money, more shine, less peeling paint. I'd smiled and wished them well. Then I'd gone downstairs and tried not to cry. Jenny, I said when she walked in, rubbing her eyes after a late class, do you remember someone dropping off craft supplies from Urban Pathways? She frowned. Yeah, she said slowly. Woman in a blazer, blonde, high ponytail, said her company had extras from a campaign and wanted to donate. Why? Do you remember her name? I asked. No, Jenny said. But she mentioned Bright Futures, said they work with them on branding. Why? I turned the glitter tub over in my hands. Because this came in that box, I said. And kids started getting sick right after. Jenny stared at it. You think, she started, then stopped. I don't know what I think yet, I said, but the timing is bad. And if that box came through a company that works with Bright Futures, I didn't finish. She did. Then the most perfect after-school center in town might not be so perfect, she said softly. I stared at the glitter, my pulse pounding in my ears. I'd always thought competition in the nonprofit world was subtle grant applications, donor lunches, maybe the occasional side-eye at networking events. I hadn't considered sabotage. I barely sleep that night. Every time I close my eyes, I see a plastic tub of gold glitter sitting in the middle of the table like a bomb. I keep hearing Priya moan, seeing Mateo clutch his chest. I picture that box from Urban Pathways like it's glowing red in my memory. By morning, my mind has already done the dangerous thing. It's filled in the blanks. Someone sent us poison. I know I'm not supposed to jump there without proof. Miss Chang's voice is still in my head. We don't know yet, but my gut is ahead of the facts, and it's sprinting. At 10 a.m., she calls. We rushed that sample, she says. You were right to flag it. My breath freezes halfway in my chest. What did you find? I ask. There are traces of a sedative in the glitter, she says. Low dose, but enough that, if ingested or inhaled over time, could make small children dizzy, nauseous, weak. It lines up with the symptoms you described. I grip the edge of the desk so hard my fingers hurt. How does sedative get into glitter? I ask. It doesn't, she says. Not by accident. The silence between us is heavy. Is it lethal? I whisper. Not at the levels we're seeing, she says. If it was, you'd have seen more severe reactions faster. But it's serious. This is intentional contamination of something children handle. I swallow. So what happens now? I ask. We have to treat this like a criminal matter, she says. We'll be contacting the police. We also need every detail about how that glitter came into your building. Chain of custody. Who donated it? Who handled it? Everything. Urban Pathways Marketing, I say immediately. They dropped off a box of craft supplies 3 weeks ago. One of their reps. Write down everything you remember, she says. Names, dates, descriptions. Don't throw anything away. Don't confront anyone by yourself. The detectives will want your raw notes, not your conclusions. I hang up and just sit there for a second, letting the words settle. Sedative, intentional contamination, criminal. Downstairs, kids are coloring with crayons, eating prepackaged crackers, giggling over jokes I can't hear. They have no idea someone turned a tub of glitter into a weapon and aimed it at them. I pull out the donations log, our scribbled notes, Jenny's half-finished spreadsheet. I write down everything I remember about the woman from Urban Pathways. Ponytail, blazer, the way she'd smiled too wide and too fast, how she'd insisted on carrying the box all the way to the art corner instead of leaving it by the door like most donors. When the detectives arrive that afternoon, it feels like the room shrinks. There are 2 of them. A woman in her 40s with a calm face and dark hair pinned back, Detective Ruiz, and a younger man with a notebook already open. Miss Chang comes with them, holding her folder against her chest like a shield. We sit at the long table where kids usually do homework. First, I want you to know you did the right thing calling us, Detective Ruiz says. This could have been much worse if you hadn't noticed the pattern. I should have noticed sooner, I say before I can stop myself. Kids were getting sick for weeks. You noticed when most people wouldn't, she says simply. Start at the beginning, in your own words. So I tell it. The vomiting, the stomach cramps, Lexi's limp body on the mat, the visit from the health department switching to packaged snacks, the day kids got sick before eating, the glitter tub that smelled wrong, the box from Urban Pathways, Bright Futures. She takes it all in, occasionally stopping me for exact dates or names. The younger detective writes constantly. Did anyone else handle that donation? She asks. Probably Ruth and Jenny, I say. We all help unpack boxes. But I remember the rep bringing it in herself, she insisted. Most people just drop things at the front. Can you describe her? She asks. White, I say slowly. Maybe late 20s. Blonde hair in a high ponytail. Navy blazer, light pink lipstick. She said they do branding work for Bright Futures. Did she give a business card? She asks. I want to say yes so badly. I want to be helpful to give them a clean trail. I don't think so, I say frustrated. If she did, it's buried in the office avalanche. Don't go looking for it alone, Ruiz says. We'll have someone comb through. For now, write down everything you can remember while it's fresh. Even small things. Accent, jewelry, smell, anything. They photograph the art corner, the now empty space place where glitter used to live, the locked cabinet where we put the boxed up craft supplies. We'll also need to talk to your board, Ruiz says. Who's in charge of donations? Who approves them? Our board chair is Pastor Allen, I say, and Lydia handles donor relations. She's the one with all the corporate contacts. Lydia, the younger detective prompts. Harper. I say, Lydia Harper. His pen scratches faster. When they leave, Miss Chang pulls me aside. Kara, she says quietly, I can't tell you everything we'll be doing, but I can tell you this. Don't let anyone pressure you into keeping quiet. You're a key witness now. That's not going to make me popular, I say. Her mouth tightens in something like sympathy. Kids getting poisoned never makes anyone popular, she says. It just makes the truth necessary. That night, we have another board meeting. This time, the air in the fellowship hall feels electric. Pastor Allen looks older than he did last week. Ruth sits in the corner, hands folded tightly, eyes on the table. Lydia walks in last, phone in hand, mouth a tight line. Miss Chang has confirmed contamination, Pastor Allen says, voice shaking just a little. The glitter was laced with a sedative. The police are involved. Oh my God, one of the older board members whispers. Lydia doesn't look surprised. She looks furious. Who knows this? She asks sharply. Outside this room, the health department, the detectives. Some parents know their kids were sick, obviously, Pastor Allen says, but the details don't go anywhere, she says. This could destroy us. Lydia, he says, children were harmed, and I am not minimizing that, she says, though her tone says otherwise. But we do not shout poison in a crowded church basement unless we want every donor we have left to run for the hills. I feel my hands ball into fists on my lap. The police will talk to parents eventually, I say. They'll find out. We can't hide it. We don't hide it, she says. We control it. There's a difference. She turns to me. What exactly did you tell them? She asks. The truth, I say. What happened? Who donated that box? That I remember the rep mentioning Bright Futures. Her eyes flash. You dragged Bright Futures into this. She snaps. I didn't drag anyone, I say. I answered questions. Their name came up because the woman said it. Do you have proof? She asks. A recording, a business card, an email? No, I admit. Then you gave the police a rumor, she says. A feeling. Do you know how much damage a careless word can cause? They have a waiting list of 100 kids. They are beloved in this city. And now you've whispered that they might be poisoning children. I said it might be relevant. I say, heat rising in my face. It's a lead. That's what detectives follow. Do you know who their board chair is? She asks, leaning forward. Councilman Ruiz, as in the man who controls a big portion of the youth program budget in this district. Do you want him as an enemy? I blink. That connects too many dots too quickly. Are you saying we should protect Bright Futures so we don't upset a councilman? I ask. I'm saying we don't throw their name around without proof, she says tightly. They have lawyers. They have PR. We have folding chairs and borrowed Wi-Fi. Be smart, Pastor Allen clears his throat. Enough, he says. Our first priority is the children. Then our integrity. Politics come after. Politics pay the bills, Lydia mutters, but she sits back. Kara, Pastor Allen says, turning to me. The detectives may contact you again. Answer honestly, keep detailed notes, but until we know more, please do not talk to media. If reporters show up, refer them to me. I nod. I understand his fear, even if I hate the way it feels like a gag. After the meeting, as I gather my papers, Lydia steps close. Off the record, she says, voice low. We're not on the record for anything, I say. I'm not a reporter. Her lips twitch in a tight, almost smile. Bright Futures has been circling us for years, she says. We go after the same grants, the same city funds. Every time the lighthouse gets positive attention, they send someone to collaborate who somehow leaves with a check. Do I think someone in their orbit might have done something extreme? I don't know. Do I think we'll be burned alive if we point fingers and can't prove it? Absolutely. So what do? I ask. We document, she says. We protect our kids today and our reputation long term, and we do not let donors see us as messy. Messy, I repeat. Liability, she translates. When I drive home that night, the anger in my chest burns hotter than the coffee in my travel mug. Kids got poisoned, and we're talking about messy. 2 days later, the detectives call me back in. This time, it's at the station. The room smells like old paper and burnt coffee. A fan buzzes in the corner. I sit across from Detective Ruiz, my notebook open in front of me like a shield. We identified the glitter compound, she says. It contained a sedative similar to what veterinarians use for small animals. We also trace the bin type to a local craft supplier. Does that help? I ask. It gives us a source, she says. Urban Pathways Marketing bought several tubs of blank craft containers and bulk glitter last month for a corporate event. One of their employees signed them out. We've been talking to their office. My heart starts to race. Who? I ask. Her gaze flicks to her folder. Megan Ross, she says. Assistant account manager, 27, lives in a one-bedroom apartment downtown. She does branding work for several clients, including Bright Futures. Jenny's description flashes in my mind. Blonde ponytail blazer. That's her, I say. I'm almost sure. We showed your description to her boss, Ruiz says. He confirmed Megan handled the donation to your center. She insists she just dropped off extra supplies from an event. Nothing more. Do you believe her? I ask. Ruiz doesn't answer that directly. We got a warrant for her work emails, she says instead. We're still going through them, but we already found something interesting. She slides a printed email across the table. It's between Megan and someone with a Bright Futures email address, hannah.gray@brightfutures.org. In the thread, they're discussing an activation at our center. Then one line jumps out like it's written in flames. If Lighthouse keeps taking all the sympathy donations, there's no point in us existing. We need to remind people they're not safe just because a church slaps a halo on their programs. My stomach turns. Is that? I start. We don't know context yet, Ruiz says. On its own, it's not proof, but it shows attitude. And when you pair attitude with contaminated craft donations, it starts to look like motive and opportunity. So what happens to them? I ask to Megan, to Bright Futures. We're still building the case, she says, but we'll likely recommend charges for tampering with consumer products and child endangerment. Whether that extends to the organization depends on who knew what and when. She leans forward. I need to ask you something, she says. Did anyone from your board suggest downplaying Bright Futures' involvement or steer you away from mentioning them? My mind flashes to Lydia's hard eyes, her warning about councilmen and donors. I think about all the times I've told kids, if you see something wrong, you tell a grown-up you trust. I take a breath. Lydia urged me not to say their name without proof, I say carefully. She's scared of the politics, but she didn't tell me to lie. She told me to manage the message. Pastor Allen, though, he's been clear that we tell the truth. Ruiz writes something down. You're in a hard spot, she says. Nonprofits live and die on relationships. But kids nearly died here. That has to matter more. When I leave the station, the world looks sharper. The sky is too bright. The traffic sounds too loud. On my way back to the lighthouse, my phone buzzes. It's an unknown number. Hello. I answer. Miss Walker. A woman's voice says. This is Hannah Gray, director of Bright Futures Youth Center. Do you have a moment to talk? My hands tighten on the steering wheel. How did you get my number? I ask. Urban Pathways shared your contact when the police reached out, she says smoothly. I thought it would be helpful if we spoke directly. There's been a misunderstanding, and I'd hate for your program to suffer because of it. Something in her tone makes my skin crawl. It's calm, careful, like someone stepping around broken glass. What What misunderstanding? I ask. We heard you told the police one of our partners donated contaminated supplies, she says. We had no knowledge of anything like that. Megan is devastated. She says she was trying to help your kids, not hurt them. You know how stories spin out of control. I know kids got sick, I say. And that breaks my heart, she says quickly. Truly, we're in the same line of work, Miss Walker. We both care deeply for these children. But if this turns into Bright Futures tried to poison the competition, that hurts both of us. Funders don't like drama. My jaw tightens. What are you asking? I say. I'm asking for collaboration, she says. Let us put out a joint statement. Something along the lines of, we're grateful for the support of many partners, including Urban Pathways and Bright Futures. At this time, there's no evidence of intentional harm. It calms everyone down. It keeps the focus on the kids, and it keeps the city from cutting your funding because you seem unstable. There it is, the threat, wrapped in concern. There is evidence of intentional harm, I say quietly. Glitter doesn't lace itself with sedatives, but not evidence that we ordered it, she says, voice tightening for the first time. You have no idea what that girl's going through. She's in tears. Her career could be over because you tossed our name into a police interview, like gossip at a potluck. I answered their questions, I say, that's all. And now our lawyers are answering theirs, she says. I want you to understand the stakes. If a narrative forms that you're smearing other organizations without proof, you lose credibility. You lose partners. You lose donors. Maybe you even lose your lease if the church gets nervous, all because you didn't choose your words carefully. I pull into the church parking lot and put the car in park, heart pounding. I'm not going to lie for you, I say. Who's asking you to lie? She says. I'm asking you to focus on what we can prove, which right now is that kids got sick at your facility under your watch. If this goes badly, the city won't just look at contaminated glitter. They'll look at supervision, sanitation, training. They'll pull every file. Are you sure you want that kind of light on your operation? For a moment, fear washes over me. I think about our old fridge, our peeling paint, our overworked volunteers. I imagine inspectors with clipboards, donors with nervous smiles. Then I think of Lexi asking, am I bad? With an 4 in her arm. I'd rather have light than shadows, I say. Even if it shows our cracks. She's quiet for a beat. I hoped you'd be reasonable, she says at last. But if you prefer to go the legal route, we'll meet you there. She hangs up. I sit in the car for a long time, watching kids play in the churchyard, feeling like I've just stepped across the line. I can't uncross. Inside, Pastor Allen is in his office, staring at a stack of bills. He looks up, exhausted. You okay? He asks. No, I say. But I know what side I'm on. I tell him about the call. His face goes pale, then flushes red. They tried to intimidate you, he says. That's all that was. They're scared, I say. And when people with power get scared, they get dangerous. He sits back, rubbing his chin. We'll need a lawyer, he says. We can't go into this blind. A week later, everything explodes. A local reporter posts the story online. Church basement program under investigation for poisoned kids. The photo shows the outside of our building, gray and tired, with our plastic banner drooping over the door. The article mentions the health department, the police, and a corporate partner connected to a rival youth center. They don't name Bright Futures, but you'd have to be blind not to connect the dots. Comments flood in. How could they let this happen? Close the place down. Non-profits are all shady. My sister's kid goes there. This is terrifying. Some defend us. They feed kids nobody else sees. My son loves mascara. This is what happens when we underfund safety. By the evening, a camera crew is parked across the street. Pastor Allen goes out to talk to them. Shoulders straight, Bible still on his desk inside. He gives the same line he's practiced. We're cooperating fully. Our first concern is the children. He doesn't mention sabotage. He doesn't mention Bright Futures. He doesn't mention glitter. I stay downstairs with the kids reading the same page of a storybook 3 times because my mind is elsewhere. After pickup, my phone buzzes. It's Jenny. Have you seen the Bright Futures statement? She texts. I pull it up. They posted a glossy graphic on social media. Their logo, a stock photo of smiling kids, and a caption. We are aware of concerning reports about another local program. While we had no involvement in the situation, our hearts go out to the affected families. We remain committed to the highest standards of safety. Underneath, in smaller text, as a precaution, we are reviewing our partnership practices with third-party vendors. Replies pour in, mostly praising them for their professionalism. Jenny sends another text. They're washing their hands of it, she writes, and throwing Urban Pathways under the bus. That night, my inbox pings with an email from a law firm representing Urban Pathways. They want to clarify a few details and understand the nature of our allegations. I forward it to the legal aid attorney Pastor Allen managed to find. She's young, overworked, and brilliant, with tired eyes and a sharp mind. Her name is Samira. Her reply is simple. Do not respond, I'll handle it. The next big shift comes from somewhere I didn't expect, the parents. One afternoon, as we're packing up after snack time, Christopher's mom, Jaden's mom, walks in holding a stack of papers. We made a group chat, she says, eyes fierce. Parents from Lighthouse. We're not lawyers, but we're not stupid either. I blink. You what? I ask. We talked, she says. We compared notes. Our kids got sick after using glitter, not after eating. That's on the record. Some of us also volunteer at Bright Futures sometimes. We know their director. We know people at Urban Pathways. Nobody's telling us the full truth, so we're going to ask for it. She lays the papers on the table. We're forming a parents' coalition, she says, to push for answers. From the city, from the health department, from Bright Futures, from you. We don't want you shut down, Miss Kara. We want you cleaned up and protected. Same with every place that touches our kids. I feel tears sting my eyes. I thought everyone blamed us, I say. Some of us did, she says frankly. At first, we were scared, but then we watched who panicked and who tried to fix it. You called ambulances. You stayed late with those inspectors. You looked like you hadn't slept in weeks. Bright Futures posted graphics. A small laugh escapes me. They do like their graphics, I say. You're not perfect, she says. This building needs work. Your fridge looks older than my mother, but my son loves this place. And I've seen you take his asthma more seriously than his own father does. That counts. The coalition eventually meets in our upstairs hall one evening. Parents, some with babies on hips, some with work clothes still on. They share stories. They talk about fear. They also talk about hope. Samira comes to explaining their rights in simple language. She uses phrases like class action and policy change and systemic negligence. Someone asks if Bright Futures will be shut down. Probably not, she says. Organizations like that rarely disappear overnight, but they can be forced to change, and so can the city. In the back, Ruth wipes her eyes. Jenny scribbles notes, eyes blazing. A month later, there's a public hearing at City Hall. The topic, youth program safety and accountability. I sit in the second row with Jenny and Pastor Allen, heart pounding. The chamber smells like old wood and stress. Councilman Ruiz presides. To his credit, he doesn't duck the issue. He opens by acknowledging deep concerns and community pain. Then he calls witnesses. Miss Chang speaks first, explaining the contamination calmly and clearly. Ruiz asks if the church program was negligent. She shakes her head. They were disorganized, underfunded, and overwhelmed, she says, but not negligent. In fact, their staff showed more persistence in finding the cause than some better resourced facilities I've seen. Then she talks about the glitter, the sedative, the Urban Pathways purchase order. Next up is Detective Detective Ruiz not related. Just a coincidence, she jokes about. She lays out the case, the emails, the timeline, the fact that Megan from Urban Pathways has now been charged with product tampering and reckless endangerment. Did she act alone? The councilman asks. That's still under investigation, she says carefully. We have emails suggesting pressure from a client to remind donors that the lighthouse was not safe, but proving direct orders to contaminate products is complicated. Is that client Bright Futures Youth Center? He asks. Murmurs ripple through the room. She looks at her notes. At this time, she says, we can confirm that Megan discussed the lighthouse with a director at Bright Futures in emails that show frustration and competitive tension. We do not have a signed instruction saying poison the glitter. We do, however, have a culture. That word hangs there. A culture, he repeats. A culture where resources are scarce, reputations are everything, and programs feel like they're fighting for scraps, she says. That doesn't excuse what happened, but it explains how someone might convince themselves that making a rival look unsafe is some kind of twisted strategy. He looks uncomfortable. Good. Parents testify next. Lexi's mom cries, describing the hospital. Mateo's dad's voice shakes with anger. Christopher's mom talks about trust and betrayal and how tired she is of being told to be grateful for any help, no matter how risky. Then, somehow, it's my turn. I walk to the microphone with shaking legs. The council chamber feels too big. I recognize some faces from drop-off, from Sunday services, from the grocery store. State your name for the record. Someone says, Kara Walker. I say, program director of the lighthouse. Miss Walker, Councilman Ruiz says, you were in charge when these incidents happened. What would you like this body to understand? I take a breath. I want you to understand that we were not ready, I say. Not ready for sabotage. Not ready for the kind of evil that puts sedatives in glitter. We're a church basement with donated furniture. We teach kids to share scissors and sound out words. We did not think anyone saw us as a threat worth poisoning. I pause. They're actually listening, I keep going. But I also want you to know we paid attention when kids were hurt, I say. We called ambulances. We called the health department. We stayed late making spreadsheets and scrubbing tables. We cried in storage closets and then came back out to read another storybook. I glance at the Bright Futures director sitting farther back, Hannah's jaw tight. I have nothing against nice buildings, I say. I wish we had one. But if your funding system turns youth programs into enemies, if it tells us we have to fight each other for survival, then you've built a machine that eats the very kids you claim to protect. A few people clap before they're shushed. I am not asking you to shut anyone down, I say. I'm asking you to change the rules. Stop making safety optional. Make it funded. Make it required. Make it supported. And build real protections for staff who speak up, so no one has to choose between telling the truth and keeping their job. I finish and step back. My hands are trembling so badly I have to clasp them together. After the hearing, everything feels surreal. In the weeks that follow, things shift. Urban Pathways quietly settles with the Parents Coalition, agreeing to pay damages and fund a citywide safety training program for youth staff. Megan pleads guilty to product tampering. In her statement, she says she acted under pressure to help a client win back market share, but no one from Bright Futures is criminally charged. Their board hires a PR firm. They announce internal reviews and a temporary leadership change. Hannah steps aside with a statement about needing to focus on her family. On our side, the city allocates emergency funds to upgrade old facilities. We get a new fridge, fresh paint, better tables. It feels like Christmas and guilt at the same time. The church hires Samira on a small retainer to help us rewrite our policies. Miss Chang's team runs a training at the lighthouse for staff from programs across the district. We talk about red flags, documentation, calling for help even when bosses say wait. Some people avoid me now, like I'm radioactive. Others bring me coffee and thank me in whispers. One afternoon, Jenny finds me in the art corner, restocking markers. You know you're a whistleblower, right? She says. I know I'm tired, I say. Does that count? She grins. Kids are alive because you wouldn't shut up, she says. That's not nothing. A few months later, Pastor Allen calls me into his office. He looks happier than I've seen him in a long time. The board voted, he says. We want you to take on a new title. I blink. I already have like 5, I say. Director, janitor, substitute therapist, he laughs. Director of programs and safety, he says, with a raise small but real. You've already been doing the work. We want to acknowledge it. I sit down slowly. Are you sure? I ask. After all this, wouldn't donors prefer someone quieter? We don't want quiet anymore, he says. We want honest. You drew a line and stayed on the right side of it even when it hurt. That's the kind of leadership I pray for. I sign the new contract that afternoon. It feels like drawing my own boundary in ink. The next time a parent asks if their child will be safe here, I don't give them some vague reassurance. I tell them about the glitter, about the hearings, about the new protocols, about the fact that if anything seems wrong, we will overreact on purpose. We learned the hard way what silence costs, I say. We're not paying that price again. Sometimes late at night, the guilt still whispers. You should have noticed sooner. You should have checked the glitter earlier. You should have protected them better. I don't know if that voice ever goes away, but there's another voice now too. It sounds like Lexi's mom, and Mateo's dad, and the coalition, and Jenny, and even Miss Chang. You saw what most people don't. You stood up when it was easier to sit down. You turned a weapon into a warning sign. One afternoon, almost a year after the first incident, I'm cleaning up after an art session. The kids are using new glitter, now labeled tested, boring as dirt. We keep it locked when they're not using it. They complain about the rules. I don't apologize. As I'm stacking chairs, Lexi runs over. Miss Kara, she says. Look. She holds up her drawing. It's a clumsy lighthouse, beams of yellow crayon light cutting through a messy blue storm. That's us. I ask. Yes, she says firmly. We shine so kids don't get lost. For a second, I can't speak. My throat is too tight. That's exactly right. I manage. We hang her picture on the wall. Later, when the last child has gone and the lights are off, I stand in the doorway and look back at the room. It's still a church basement with low ceilings and scuffed floors, but it doesn't feel like a trap anymore. It feels like a line we won't let anyone cross again. Not a donor, not a director, not a partner, not even fear. I used to think the most unexpected enemy would be some stranger far away, someone obvious, someone easy to hate. Now I know better. Sometimes the enemy is a person who tells you to stop asking questions for the good of the program. Sometimes it's a system that makes you think you have to choose between money and honesty. Sometimes it's the part of you that wants to stay quiet because noise is dangerous. And sometimes the only way to win is to decide that protecting children matters more than protecting anyone's reputation, including your own. So when glitter spills now, we sweep it up fast. We wash our hands, we write it down, we call when we need help. We shine our little light in the cheapest, brightest way we know how. And we refuse politely but firmly to ever be anyone's quiet victim again.